Welcome to a brand new Con Nation Overreaction. I'm your host, Greg Mahochko, and joined by my good friend, fellow Husker fan, and longtime broadcast buddy, Haas Reuter. Haas, good seeing you across the interwebs. It was better seeing you last week in person, but great to see you, sir. How are you doing tonight?
You know what? I'm doing good, Greg. Wrapping up a weekend where Nebraska wins, the Chiefs win, and we got a big game this Friday.
Oh, you mentioned it. I want to go there real quick. The Chiefs game, they won. You're happy. Cam Taylor-Britt had one of the sweetest interceptions ever, and he's a former Husker fan.
Yep.
Despite the fact that it obviously killed a Chiefs drive, tell me your thoughts in that moment.
Oh, when it happens, my first thought's like, hey, that's Cam Taylor-Britt. Second thought I had was it's a great, phenomenal play. Third thing was, boy, he's so good, even Scott Frost couldn't fuck him up. I mean, that was basically the stream of consciousness that went through my mind when that happened.
Yeah, no, it was a tremendous play. Look, if go find it. If you don't know what we're talking about, I guarantee you it's going to be on SportsCenter's top 10. And if it's not the top play, then something even more ridiculous happened.
I mean, we're talking like it's like the interception version of Odell Beckham Jr.'s catch 10 years ago.
Agreed. And it just so happened as a former Husker. Like, look, no love for the Bengals. I'm glad that they lost, but I do like seeing former Huskers shine at the next level, as long as it's not against my team. Fair.
And
cool.
But, did your Steelers win today? Or
they did?
They did against my most hated team in the NFL.
It was 16-3, 18-3, something like that.
That's the most Steelers score I've ever heard.
13-6. I'm sorry, 13-6. So they have one touchdown in their two games. They won in week one, scoring 18 points on 6 field goals. Added 2 more field goals today. Chris Boswell's earning his paycheck. The rest of the offense, not so much. But the defense is standing tall, and the Steelers are first in their division, the only team 2-0. So
there you go.
I don't care for the Steelers, so I appreciate you asking.
Yeah, I mean, they've killed the Chiefs season on more than one occasion. So, I'm not a big fan.
Let them do it to the Broncos today. Let them take care of your bitter rival, and I know that puts a little smile on your face.
My team's taking care of a few of your rivals the past few years.
I like that it's cross. Well, I don't have a good phrase for it, but I know what I'm trying to say. We're just going to move on.
Symbiotic.
Let us reflect, shall we, on last night. Of course, we're recording this. It's Sunday night. The game was another night game, 6:30 Central kickoff, Memorial Stadium, as the then 23. They were whatever they were. They were 23. They're up now because they defeated Northern Iowa, and it was the final score 34-3. It didn't feel like, as weird as it sounds, it didn't feel like a game that was 34-3. Largely, I think, because of the way that Northern Iowa played in that first half on offense. They had long, sustained drives. They didn't go anywhere, but they chewed a lot of clock. I think Matt Rhule said going into the locker room at halftime, what do you need to work on? Tackling. And yep. He's like, we have to tackle better. And you tackle better, maybe, some of those long drives don't. I mean, they went 10 minutes in 16 plays, settled for a field goal in that opening drive. But 34-3, Hassan, before we started rolling sound, you said this game was what now?
This game was like sitting through getting a root canal. Like, the result that we got is good for us, like getting a root canal, but nothing about it was pleasant. It felt downright painful at times.
Yeah.
It went on forever. I mean, my God, I felt like that game stretched like 4.5 hours. And so with this game, with it being kind of the root canal, I think that should be like the new way to describe a Big Ten West. Well, RIP to the Big Ten West.
Right.
A Big Ten football game at 11 a.m. on a November Saturday morning. It's like getting a root canal. I think they should put it on shirts. They should put it on the billboard outside of the Chicago Big Ten offices and just, really embrace it. Because, right, when he earlier in the week, he said it was going to be like a Big Ten football game. And in a lot of ways, UNI was built like a Big Ten football team.
And I'll say this, one of my first observations, how they moved the ball against our defense in the first possession, and they settled for a field goal. We're happy that, the defense buckled down. But I took to X, by the way, the number 5 Heart podcast over on X for some of those in-game thoughts. Thank you. And I said, well, so far, the only thing I've summed up about UNI is that they're better than Colorado.
You're not wrong. You're not totally wrong there. And I thought they had a great game plan overall.
Mm-hmm.
They really focused on just running the football with their offensive, getting movement with their offensive line, really doubling Ty and Nash. And then other than that, they just kind of forced our linebackers to make plays. So they really tried to negate our defensive line, but eventually, our defense was able to get stops in the red zone. And I think one thing that needs to be pointed out too, overall about the defensive performance against them is we weren't playing with every first string guy together.
Right.
We were mixing and matching personnel, which I think is a really good way for development to do that. But yeah, they really forced our linebackers to come up and tackle and run support. And I think this was the first time all year that our linebackers have had to do that because they've had the benefit of, a dominant defensive line in front of them.
Part of that being no Jamari Butler.
Yep.
And no Mekhi Bayor the first half, due to the targeting penalty in the second half of the Colorado game. So, yeah, you did have some integral pieces missing early on there. But still, and to UNI's credit, their offensive game plan had their quarterback getting out of the pocket quite a bit and trying to go, side to side and making some of those big boys chase him a little bit. And that helped them. And Nebraska had to play a little bit more honest. They couldn't cheat. And honestly, going into Big Ten play, I think that was a better tune-up than the Colorado game.
I think so too, because everybody in the Big Ten is going to want to chew it up with time of possession to get, the advantage there. You're going to face a lot of double teams at the line of scrimmage in the Big Ten. And then on top of that, you're really going to see quarterbacks move around like that. It goes back to what we talked about with Shedeur Sanders last week. That offense is not hard to defend, schematically at Colorado. They play 10 personnel. They have no threat of quarterback run game. They don't have any gap schemes. They don't use a tight end. They don't use a fullback. They don't pull anybody. It's just inside zone and pass plays. They don't even really have much of a diverse screen game either. And so you're able to really tee off. But when you're playing teams that you're fitting pullers and you're fitting tight ends and fullbacks in the run game, it forces you to think on the fly. And UTEP really didn't do that either. They really were kind of more of a 10 personnel, 3x1 or 2x2 formations that really just wanted to move the ball vertically and run at a fast tempo. So I think UNI fits in culturally as a Big Ten team, not just geographically, obviously. And I think that this is probably the best tune-up game we could have expected going into the Illinois game, because you're going to see a lot of the same stuff from Illinois. Maybe not as run heavy, because they're going to put it into Luke Altmaier's hands a little bit more than what they put in Aiden Dunn's hands for Northern Iowa. But you're going to see a lot of the same physicality.
You mentioned time of possession and how that's going to be, and has been what the Big Ten kind of prides itself on a little bit. Again, the shortening the game. Nebraska clearly not worried about that.
No, go down.
Let's get the ball. Let's go down and score. The first possession, Nebraska received the opening kickoff. The first possession went 75 yards, 8 plays, 3 minutes and 20 seconds. It ended with a touchdown, the first catch, I believe, and the first touchdown for sure by Carter Nelson, a 24-yard play. But it only went, from there. it got shorter. They went 75 yards in 7 plays for their next score. And then, that's only the first quarter. So I have to jump to the next quarter. But I think the third score was like 4 plays or something. I mean, it was ridiculous. It was 4 plays, 2 minutes, 5 seconds for the Ja'Cory Barney Jr. run for 10 yards for a touchdown. Nebraska is doing everything it can to like, hey, we want the ball. We just want to score. And we have enough faith in our defense to figure it out and get the stops. And yeah, some of those UNI possessions started getting shorter and shorter as, the defense was wearing down. I mean, like we still had the size advantage on the line, our defensive line to their offensive line. And, we started talking about, getting Mekhi Bayer back in the second half. I mean, things started clicking. And, I watched our founder, fearless leader, John Dam Johnston's instant reaction last night. And he says, I'll say it again. I've said it the last 2 weeks. At no point was Nebraska ever in danger of losing this game.
No, at no point. That's exactly right. There was no point that we were in danger of losing it. I think that as we've pieced together wins this year, just the expectations go up on not only is it enough to win games, there starts to come in, the
win sexy
standpoint of it's stylistic, like stylistically, how do you win? So it's like, that's a good problem to have because it means we're actually winning, But it's hard to believe that 3 weeks time can change gone are the days of just win, baby. Like who cares how we win, just win to, oh man, that we won 34-3, but God, that didn't really feel like 34-3 should have felt.
Right. And to that, I definitely agree with, that kind of fan mentality, but man, are we spoiled.
Oh yeah.
Because we went from, we just need to win to now we're not winning well enough.
Yeah.
It's like, wait, slow down. Let's pump the brakes. Let's again mitigate our expectations because we are now. This was, I think it was in the post game presser. I think it was when Dylan was up there at the very end, and one of the journalist writers said, "All right, you're a quarter of the way through your freshman season." I got thinking like, shit, we're already a quarter of the way through the season.
It goes fast, man. Every year.
And we hope that obviously a quarter is more like, a fifth. We don't want just 12 games. We want,
we want 16.
We're going to go all the way. But everything, offensively, I got really zero complaints. I mean, you can nitpick that interception. I heard some people say that Jalen Lloyd should have fought for it more, but the way that he caught that, it looked like he more or less had it on his hip, and it would take, I just think, tremendous forearm strength to maintain that when the defender's right there with both hands. I don't know. When you break that one down, Haas, what more could he have done?
That's exactly what I was going to say. Like Rhule placed it to where it needed to be. It was just a case of the DB and Jalen Lloyd kind of colliding at the same time. And it's just kind of a freak play. I know it's going to go down as a turnover in the stat column, but at the same time, I'm like, is it really a turnover?
Yeah.
Is it really a turnover? Because it's just a freak thing. And I was going to say, speaking of the offense, if Northern Iowa's defense would have muddied things up and made our offense feel like they didn't execute at a high level, like kind of how we feel defensively, that's when I would be concerned.
Sure.
That's when I would be concerned. But the fact that the offense was so effortless, they did what they were supposed to do. I just still feel like there's a lot of stuff, both schematically and personnel-wise, that we've held back on. I just feel like we haven't hit full throttle quite yet. You look at Rhiula's numbers, and it's insane numbers already, the completion percentage. But it's like he's not throwing for a shit ton of yards, and you're feeling like that's got to happen at some point. There's so much speed that we have at receiver that there's a part of me that's like, last night I'm sitting there watching the game thinking, if we've got this much speed at receiver, why are we struggling to gain separation from Northern Iowa?
Mm-hmm.
And then, like, as I kind of digest it a little bit more fully now, I look at it and I think, okay, we've got the speed receiver. Are we really doing things to showcase the speed, or are we still just kind of in a mode of, hey, let's just go very vanilla. Let's just do what we need to do to win games. Because Rhule made a comment that stood out to me last night where he said that deep ball to Jalen Lloyd, he was like, we had to put it on tape. We had to put it on tape so other teams saw it.
I love that comment.
Felt like a tape game. We had a lot of looks that we hadn't shown all year. Carter Nelson's touchdowns off of play called Haas Y Juke. Haas standing for hitch over outside seam. Hitch outside seam.
Wouldn't that be Hoos, not Haas?
No, yeah. Hitch outside seam.
Okay.
So you got hitches on the inside, you got seam routes on the outside, and then the Y receiver who's lined up in the slot runs a little juke route where he's just running up to the middle linebacker, pressing the linebacker, running right up on his toes, and depending on where he moves, the receiver runs opposite. So if he just sits there trying to wall off the Y receiver, the Y receiver will come inside, then juke back outside, pivot back outside. If he tries to take away the outside, that's when he'll just sit inside. And then on other times, if he's really playing him tight, that's when he'll make a move and just keep running across the field. Julian Edelman, the New England Patriots, ran this ad nauseum over the years. And it's a great play. Carter Nelson kind of taking that role that, Julian Edelman and Gronk, used to run this play in New England. And so when I saw that, I was like, we haven't shown that all year. And then our run game is still very vanilla.
Mm-hmm.
It's about as vanilla as it gets. We're running duo, we're running wide zone. That's it. We mix in a little counter, but I think you're going to start seeing us start to throw in stuff as we get more in the meat of Big Ten play. Stuff that's going to be tendency breakers, stuff that's going to play with the eyes of the defenders a little bit to get them out of position. So I like where the offense is at design-wise. I like the scheme. I think it's executing at a high level. I think that I would like to see more pulling linemen because I think when you pull linemen, that's something where you got to do it frequently.
Mm-hmm.
Or, because you can, basically the quality of the play can go downhill pretty fast if that's not something that's repped over and over again. So, and I always think it's just a good thing to kind of make it more difficult for defenders when they have to fit against pullers. You're talking about, hey, am I going to squeeze it down or am I going to box them back in? Am I going to wrong arm them? Like, what's the offense's answers going to be to this? So it's the adjustment to the adjustment that I'm curious that we're going to see with this offense as we move forward. Now, defensively, where we get into the adjustment to the adjustment, yeah.
Pin that defensive adjustment to the adjustment. I want to go back to your comments. You're reflecting on Matt Rhule's comments last night about having to get that on film. You're having to get that little wrinkle on film so that Illinois has to at least be aware. Making sure that they spend some time practicing, against that, and less time practicing against, the core, I guess, of what Nebraska does. But I guess my question is, if it works so dadgum well, or if you had enough confidence in it, why not save something like that? Like, why not keep that ace up your sleeve until you get to the meaningful Big Ten schedule?
Well, I think it kind of goes back to the adjustment to the adjustment.
Okay.
So you've seen now in the past 2 days or 2 games, deep shots to Jalen Lloyd on the same type of play. You saw it twice against Northern Iowa, one being the completion where Raiola dodges a defender in the backfield, 2 being the pick yesterday. Then you saw it against Colorado on Lloyd's catch down to the 1-yard line. So we're rolling off to the right, throwing a post back to the left. So you're trying to take advantage of how the coverage rotates to or away from the formation strength. And so when you're rolling back out, trying to get that, say that receiver behind the safety, you're forcing the rotation towards the quarterback's roll. Now, what I think that we're potentially trying to do is get that post route and then maybe run what they call a Yankee concept, mnemonically Yankee home run, kind of that way of thinking of a post and then a deep crosser underneath of it. So if the safety's like, oh shit, I got to stay deep, I got to take away this post route when I see this roll action from Rhule in the backfield, that's fine. You take that safety away. Well, here comes another one of the receivers, Ja'Cory Barney, Jamal Banks, whoever, on a deep crosser coming, undercutting that safety.
Okay.
So that's where I think you're going to start seeing a lot of the adjustment to the adjustment. And honestly, like you mentioned, putting a pin in that, to bring it up later, I think that's something that we should probably feature more often when we get together to discuss, the overreaction show, hey, like within the first 2-3 drives, what were we trying to do?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Because that's when you see in a football game, that's where you get a good feel for what the game plan is, the first 2-3 drives. After the first 2-3 drives, teams are either going to keep doing it because it works or they're going to scrap it. But they're going to give it about 3 drives before they scrap it because they spent all week installing it. They're going to try to troubleshoot it, work out the kinks, see if they can get it to go. But then after those 2-3 drives, that's when you start to see the adjustment to the adjustment take place.
Okay.
So, let's say we're on the road at Ohio State, and we're kicking their ass running duo with Dante Dowdell right up the middle out of a bunch formation. And let's say that they start walking up an outside linebacker and start, walking down a safety to try to get an extra guy in the box. Well, now you might see us run a little bit of a shield slant off of duo action with, one guy goes, tight end clears off line of scrimmage, the slant comes in underneath of it just to kind of shield him, nice, easy completion. Those are things we probably should start discussing on the show a little bit more.
I like, what? People want X's and O's. They tune in to you for X's and O's. And the adjustment to the way you framed that boggles the mind even more when you if I say the name, you'll say exactly the years. But when Tim Beck, and we'd be rolling in the first half, and then we come out and we scrap that offensive game plan and shit the bed.
Tim Beck, I loved the concepts that he drew up for his offense. It's like the Scott Frost phenomenon. On the whiteboard, Scott Frost is undefeated. Like those concepts, they worked exactly like they were drawn up. He didn't know how to coach them. Mm-hmm. And just like did not know how to coach them with Tim Beck, he didn't know how to troubleshoot them. So it's like we're running toss, the old toss play that we used to run. Oh, I think we ran it like 29 times against Penn State in the first half back in 2012. Just kept running over and over again. And then the second half, they started edging to take that away.
Was that the prayer game, like the prayer before the game?
No, that was the year before.
Okay.
But like we're running that over and over again, and then they start to take that away a little bit. And so then we have to start kind of, throwing the ball a little bit more. But like with Beck, it's like, okay, you're running old G scheme toss. Your fullback leads, pulling, play side guard pulls to lead around. Okay, they're setting a hard edge. They're trying to force the play back in. They're not letting you bounce it, or they're letting you bounce it, but they're bringing a safety down as run support and sky force. Okay, what do? Well, switch it to a handoff, have the play side guard kick the end, pry that open if they're trying to prevent you from getting outside. So it's like I'm not much of a physics guy. That's way above my pay grade. But for every action, there's an equal and opposite reaction.
That's right.
One of Newton's laws. That's how football is. That's the chess match of football. For every action, there's an equal and opposite reaction, at least from the X's and O's standpoint. Sometimes like you could have the perfect adjustment to the adjustment, and you're just getting your ass kicked because the other team's got dudes. Like there's no replacement for athletes at the end of the day.
And I want to go back since you mentioned that particular phrase, and I just want to go back. I know we're not here to talk about Colorado anymore, but I'm just going to say I was right. Colorado has 2 guys, because I think we silenced Jimmy Horn. I think we negated him, and a lot of Jags.
That team is so top heavy in terms of star power. It's ridiculous. They don't have the meat and potatoes of a football team.
I don't want to get into some of the not TikToks, but like some of the reels, some of the reactions to things that I saw. But basically, it was like, what their offensive line is missing? You need some of those Midwest corn-fed country boys. We ain't got any of the guys. I don't, say what they're missing a lot on their team. They handled Colorado State, but at the same time they should, this isn't a Colorado State show. So when you look at, everything Nebraska installed for last night, if you talk about those first 3 drives, they all worked. Like, everything was on schedule, offensively, no hiccups. And we got what we wanted in the second half, which was we didn't see Dylan Rhule anymore. We got to see Heinrich Harburg. We saw him earlier in the game, in the backfield. And again, I think Rhule said, got to put that stuff on film. Now they have to think about it,
Again, I'm going to use Ohio State as an example just because as the media talks about Nebraska's back, that's great. We're 3-0. We've taken care of business. But, you want my opinion, the real Nebraska's back game is you walk into the Horseshoe on October 26th and you go toe-to-toe and take down the Dragon.
Mm-hmm.
And that's the game that I think is that we put it on tape. So, okay, you bring in Heinrich Harburg, in the red zone. You put double screen on tape. They got the swing screen to one side that Harburg's running. They got the tunnel screen to the other side that Carter Nelson's running. And then you run an inside zone play to Harburg. And then you run him on a little Texas angle route out of the backfield. So when teams see that on tape, they're thinking this is what they do. But then you're able to start doing the adjustment to the adjustment. So they might start, they see him come in, they might go, we're going cover 3, we're walking an extra safety down the box. We're going to slant this way. We're going to try to take away, the running game for this guy. Well, who's to say that you don't direct snap it to him and he runs a jump pass, to the tight end for a touchdown.
Right.
Those are the possibilities, or a direct snap or you run a zone read and after you hand off to Harburg, he's got a back trailing him and you're running the, what the Niners like to call, the fullback sweep option, it's a handoff and then they're running the option after the handoff. So it's all those plays that the more you can put on tape, the better. And I think we're right now as a program, we're at a place where we can afford to put stuff on tape knowing, hey, it might not help us today, but it helps us down the road. Last year, we really couldn't do that because the margins were so razor thin.
Mm-hmm.
We are living and dying on every single play. So I think there's a lot to be said. I'm going to probably have to start charting the offense as we move forward, even though that's about a 5-hour job on Sundays and SB Nation doesn't pay me for it.
I'm so excited. Well, I'll make sure. I'll get your Venmo.
$50 an hour is the bill rate.
Nope.
All right. We can't afford it.
You're right. I can't afford it. No, you're absolutely right. I cannot afford that. As they say, it's a little rich for my blood. But just the notion that we're to a point where you're even considering, we are as a program, first of all, it's great to be winners, successful. This fan base is fired up. And, I know, I don't know the accuracy. I think, Matt Rhule being Matt Rhule, he's always going to give flowers. But I think it was after the game they said, tell us about this crowd. It's great. I said, as hyped as they were for Colorado, they might even be more so tonight. I don't know if that's the case, but I bet you there'll be an entirely different tone and tenor on Friday night when Big Ten football, 2 ranked teams, and that atmosphere at Memorial Stadium, it's going to be wild.
Oh, it's going to be – hell yeah, it's going to be wild. You got a team that, one, Illinois has kind of had our number for the past 5 years. 2,
I was there last year. They won.
Beat them in 19 and 23. They beat us in
all the other ones.
20, 21, 22. I mean, they put 3 in a row up on us, But this is a team that historically through the past 5 to 7 years has been the more physical team on the field when we played them. They have a coach who absolutely hates everything to do with Nebraska. I mean, let's talk. Bielema was an Iowa guy, first and foremost. He was DC at Kansas State. He's a Wisconsin guy, and now he's at Illinois. You can always tell there's always something a little extra when it comes to Nebraska. He was not pleased about last year's beatdown that we put on them. I remember watching the post game, and the guy looked like he was about ready to puke. And so this is a game where you got a great opportunity to take down a ranked opponent and somebody that's really tried to rub your nose in it the past couple of years on national TV. So find a way to get it done. And if we pull this off, we're ranked 22nd now. If it's a convincing enough win, I could see us jumping up to about 16th or 17th in the country.
I'm at the point, rankings are great. Yay. I'm not, honestly, because I don't value Colorado. I mean, it's great to beat the rivals, but that's not a valuable win to me. Like from a rank, I was honestly really surprised to see that we were ranked after Colorado. And no offense to Northern Iowa, they gave us their all. Matt Rhule had nothing but good things to say about them. I'm not going to talk smack about Northern Iowa, but again, that's an FCS school. Yep. That is a directional state school. Nothing wrong with that. And I hope they continue to have success at their level. But I'm still I'm not like being cynical, Greg, where I'm like, I just can't wait for it all to, just crumble and fall away. But I'd much rather wait until after Illinois or after week 5
with this. And I'm in agreement with you on this. I don't feel like we've put together a complete game yet.
And to our credit, I mean, realistically, UTEP and Northern Iowa, we didn't have to put a complete game in because we got such a lead that we were able to get a lot more guys in, which is going to be valuable in the long run. In Colorado, that wasn't complete because we didn't execute in the second half. I'll give you that.
Exactly.
But so what needs to happen starting this Friday night is 4 solid quarters of football, because if it has to be the starters, because think of it, Dylan's only played 1 complete game.
Yep. So 4 solid quarters of football, be the more physical team on the field. Don't give that, get off the field on third down, convert third down on offense. And it goes back to basically what Rhule said the day that he was hired. We're going to run the ball, stop the run, rush the passer, protect the passer and affect the passer. Those are the 4 pillars of, the football teams that Matt Rhule puts together. And so I think we're going to see that. My prediction is that we're going to see the first full 4 quarters of a game this year or this week, against Illinois. And as we kind of wrap this up, would you pull out that handy dandy prediction sheet that you took down our predictions on?
I will. Before we do that, though, do you want to talk at all about Emmett Johnson and just how bringing him in late in the game as almost like a closer? I think that's how kind of Matt Rhule described him a little bit. He's like, hey, we didn't get too much into the stats, but we had 8 different guys carry the ball last night. We had, I think, 10 different guys catch a pass. I love that depth. I mean, we're getting a lot of guys into the game, but it also tells me we can bring an Emmett Johnson in, who, by the way, we talked just a few weeks ago before the season, probably number 1 on the depth chart. Congrats to Dante Dowdell, who has, I feel like, earned that spot and solidified that. But you can bring in an Emmett Johnson when the defense might be a little gassed and have him just gash them in the third and fourth quarter.
Like he came in he played the entire game, started the entire game against Purdue last year, but he had that touchdown run at the end to put it away, 31-14. And last November, I thought that Emmett Johnson should have been getting 20 to 25 carries a game.
We talked about that.
We've talked about that. And I know some of the Chatterfields were saying, oh, Haas, come on. Like, those days are over in college football, the workhorse tailback. And it's like, yeah, you're right. They are. We were also running option last year to try to make things happen. So we were a little bit of a throwback. And I think that would have been a better choice to try to get him, 140, 150 yards on 25 carries rather than put the ball in the hands of turnover-prone quarterbacks over and over again. And so I love the speed that he shows. He reminds me a little bit of a bigger Darren Sproles. He kind of has that same forward lean as he runs. And I think that as the year goes on, you'll see him and Dowdell be a real nice 1-2 punch. And then Ramir's still going to be, that third down back, kind of don't want to call him the Marshall Faulk back because someone out there will say that I'm comparing him to Marshall Faulk. That's not the case. But he's kind of the do-it-all, all-purpose Swiss Army knife kind of running back. But I really liked what we've seen from Emmett Johnson. I'd love to see him really get a lot of carries. I'd like to see what he could do with about 15 to 18 carries in a game.
Nebraska, I mentioned eight guys ran the ball, including Dylan Rhule, a couple scrambles for 15 yards. I guess I should say net 13. But 22 attempts by these 8 players, 142 yards. The longest, of course, being Dante's 38-yarder, but Emmett Johnson had the 36-yarder. So you talk about breakaway speed. There's a lot of it there. I'm still so happy, and even more so after watching like Chasing 3. So happy for Ramir Johnson, the Gabe Urban Jr., the guys who have battled injuries, but my gosh, they're here, they're battling, they're getting some serviceable snaps. And, we talked about this after UTEP, what Gabe Urban was able to accomplish over UTEP. I mean, if you get down inside the opponent's 5, that is prime Gabe Urban space.
Yeah, it kind of makes me think that the way they bring him in so situationally that it's kind of a case of they're still working him in coming off that injury. But
those hips look good, don't they, Haas?
They do. But no, I feel like they're bringing him in as a closer, and I feel like they're doing a really nice job of getting guys to have roles within this offense. It's like Ja'Cory Barney's got the role as the game breaker. They go to, you'll notice this, they go to him anytime there's a big play that they need from the offense. And then, the last thing I'll say about putting stuff on tape, Dylan Rhule pulling it on the zone read and picking up some yards. I mean, that's something that teams, if you're going to be running out of the shotgun, you have to have that threat, and you got to make teams prepare for it.
All in all, Nebraska's 3-0, ranked 22nd in the AP poll, I believe, and maybe 23rd in the coaches. I'm not sure. I know they moved up in the AP poll. And as we look for this Friday night, the 4th game of the season already, which is just bonkers to me. The Fighting Illini come to town. It is a 7:00 kickoff, Memorial Stadium. And as far as predictions, I know we'll start with Jake. I know he's not here right now, but he said,
it's not a big game. It's not a big game.
No, but yeah. But he said Nebraska wins that one 28-21. Haas, and you're allowed to edit this if you'd like, but you said 31-21 at the outset of the season.
I'm going to stick with it.
Okay.
I'm going to stick with it. Even though, I look at it and I'm like, God, are they really going to score 21 points? But I'm going to stick with it. I'm a man of my word.
For the record, when we look at the UNI game, I'd just like to have a little reflection. I said Nebraska would win 52-10. Minnie said 45-7. Jake said 45-14, and you said 48-12. So we were all a little more hopeful on our offense, but defensively, I think we knew we were going to be able to contain them. So look, I'm not supposed to do this because it's not the Thursday night show, but I'm gonna go ahead and I'm gonna say just a skosh more. I'm gonna say 35-17 Nebraska.
Going with the Josh Hansen, best friend of the show score.
Well, first of all, he'll love that you say that. And I'm happy that Tristan Alvano got a couple of field goals, this past week. I just don't want to leave anything to chance. Like, as a guy who lives in Illinois and I work with Illinois fans, if this does not go our way at 10:30 at night, I'm going to be starting to get text messages, and I'm just not ready for it because I don't do that. I'm not going to text somebody and be like, yeah, your team sucks, or it's not my style.
I do that for one group of people and one group of people only. Iowa fans.
I do. I think I've told you this before. I have an aunt from Iowa, and so she's an Iowa fan, and her dad was a lifelong Iowa fan. So we go back and forth around Thanksgiving. Don't like those Friday text messages from her either.
Dude, I you know what? I just ignored a lot of them for about 7 years in a row.
Yeah.
All right. Well, 31-21. I'm sticking with it. Bold prediction of the game. I'm going to say that we finally have a 100-yard rusher.
All right. Who's it going to be?
You know what? I'm going to leave that one up to fate.
I know who you want to say, but I appreciate you keeping it a mystery.
I'll go a little further too.
Okay.
Rhule throws for 300.
Yeah, I'll tell you what, he's not that far off.
No.
He had about 250 this past week, and you know what? I'll say this: 303 touchdowns.
I like it.
And the only reason I say it is because I don't know if you spend it. I mean, I know you spend a little time online, but the fact that people like grown men are calling them tutties now, I cannot abide that. That's
touchdown.
It's a touchdown.
If you want to be a grown man, you want to sound hip. If you're a grown man, you want to sound hip about talking about touchdowns. Call him a Ted. So much better. So much better. But not tutties.
Tutties.
I'm 33 years old. I've never called it a tutty.
42.
And you've never called it
42.
a tutty?
No.
Good. Keep it that way.
I'm not going to start now. So, all right. Well, everybody, we appreciate you tuning in. Hey, if you're watching this over on YouTube, make sure that you do those things you're supposed to do. Like, subscribe if you haven't already, and ring that bell for notifications so that you never miss a new episode just like this. Because Haas and I, we don't always go live. We do when it's necessary, which is usually Haas saying, hey, man, I really think we should do this one live. And I say, I'll move heaven and earth for you, big guy. But when we're just dropping new content, whether it's us, Five Heart, Monday Night Therapy, John's Instant Reactions, you get the notification. You can be one of the first to head over there and enjoy it. So, again, subscribe. And, Haas, we got over 10,000 YouTube subscribers this offseason. Isn't that crazy?
It's all because of John. I mean,
it is. It 100% is. But, everybody knows you're a Kansas City Chiefs fan.
Yep.
Do you ever lay awake at night concerned that you're alienating the Broncos fans of Husker Nation, or
I'm
Packers or Vikings fans, or dare I say Cowboys fans?
I'm a native Omahan. So from the years of 2013 to about 2017, I could walk into any watering hole on a Sunday afternoon, and it was full of Packers and Broncos fans. And they were the most insufferable fans on earth. They'd see you as a Chiefs fan. It was basically like, they'd be like, oh, that's cute. You're a Chiefs fan. And now it's just like, well, like, you want to hate the Chiefs now because they're good? Well, that's how I felt about the Packers and Broncos back then.
My, how the turntables have turned.
And so, like, that's why, like, Green Bay ranks very high on my list of hated teams.
You know who's a Green Bay fan, right?
John.
I don't know how he lives in Minnesota. Maybe he does it because he's a lifelong contrarian and he just can't help himself.
Well, he likes to get drunk and get mad online.
Not anymore.
Not anymore.
Just mad. Just mad.
He's just mad. Yeah, he's not even online. He's just mad.
I was just saying, I know he doesn't drink anymore. So, all right. Well, this is great. Always great seeing you, my friend. Thank you for your wit and wisdom, and look forward to talking next weekend after another Nebraska victory. Almost said dub. I think dub's okay. Tutty, still not. Okay. But for all of you listening or watching at home, at work, wherever it may be, this is my good friend and fellow Husker fan, Hoss Reuter. And I'm Greg Mahoshko. This is the Con Nation Overreaction. We remind you, almost ended the show for a different show. We just do this a little different here on the not live show. Go Big Red. Hoss.
Win the damn game. Beat Brett Bielema.
Ooh, a double. And I'm a fan.